मंडप वाला।
आरबीआई कहता है
जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं।
Hello and welcome. It is an action-packed India at G20 today. On the show today, we tell you about all that is expected from the G20 foreign ministers meeting starting on Thursday in New Delhi, which has a substantive development agenda and may also see some diplomatic tightrope walking in view of the developing situation in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Also on the show today, the key takeaways from the first day of the G20 anti-corruption working group meeting in Gurugram and praise coming in from Bill Gates for India's digital public infrastructure. All that and more over the next 30 minutes. I'm Munna Paracharya. First up, the top stories. G20 foreign ministers to meet under India's presidency in New Delhi tomorrow in one of the largest gatherings of foreign ministers hosted by any G20 presidency. The meeting to have two sessions on multilateralism, food and energy security and emerging threats such as counterterrorism and narcotics. India reasserts its position on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra recollects PM Modi's articulation in Samarkand that this is not an era of war, says India advocates dialogue and diplomacy as the way forward. India calls upon G20 nations to adopt multilateral action for faster extradition of fugitive economic offenders and recovery of assets on the first day of the G20 anti-corruption working group meeting in Gurugram city of Haryana. Co-chair of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates addresses a G20 event on building resilient and inclusive economies. The promise of digital public infrastructure praises India for showing how investments in technology and innovation at scale can unleash changes from how people save money to how governments serve their citizens. Our top focus this evening, Delhi will host the first G20 foreign ministers meeting starting Thursday. It will be attended by the foreign ministers of most of the G20 member countries, invitee countries and high-level representatives of 19 international organizations. Issues of multilateralism, food and energy security, counterterrorism, global skill mapping, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief would be discussed prominently at the meeting. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh reports from Delhi.
Strengthening multilateralism and the need for reforms, food and energy security and development cooperation, counter-terrorism cooperation, especially in the context of new and emerging threats, global skill mapping and talent pool, and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. This all would be up for discussions when the 40-odd foreign ministers and high representatives of G20 member countries, guest countries and international organizations meet at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi for the G20 foreign ministers meeting on Thursday.
During the foreign ministers meeting, the external affairs ministers will be chairing two sessions of the foreign ministers meeting. The first session will focus on three principal sub-items. First of them relating to multilateralism. Second, something which is very crucial for the developing world, the issues related to food and energy security. And the third, the larger question of templates of development cooperation. The second session, which will focus on 4 or 5 other key issues, again relevant not just for the developing world but also for the global community as a whole.
But given the current geopolitical reality, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is likely to figure prominently in the discussions, including its economic and developmental impact.
Foreign ministers would also focus on the ongoing situation in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine conflict, but also on the impact of that conflict on the rest of the world, particularly the economic impact, particularly the development impact, the challenges that the developing countries face because of that conflict.
India has consistently advocated dialogue and diplomacy as the only way forward to bring an end to the conflict.
India's position relating to Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned. My Prime Minister's statement at Samarkand, which clearly said that this is not the era of war. And if you back it up a bit, you will find that right from the start of the conflict in February last year, my Prime Minister, in his conversations with the global leadership, including the leadership from Russia, leadership of Ukraine, leadership of other countries, has clearly stated that dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward to resolve the conflict.
A key plank of India's presidency is to take the deliberations outside the boardrooms to the people.
This is the concept which my Prime Minister has always emphasized, underlined, pushed, which is the concept of Jan Bhagidari. How do you take the progress which the G20 makes, the recommendation that it stipulates, the prescriptions that it suggests in different areas, especially the ones which are important for the global south? How do you take these recommendations outside the boardroom discussions and take it to the people?
At the Foreign Ministers' meeting, India is expected to prominently raise the concerns, interests and aspirations of the global south.
Given the deep divisions between the Russia-China combined on the one hand and the Western bloc on the other, India would want to use its G20 presidency to shape a broad consensus to deal with the economic fallout of the conflict, especially for those countries who are most vulnerable. Amritpal Singh for DD India in New Delhi.
Meanwhile, the day began with bilateral meetings ahead of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held a bilateral with UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly. The two leaders reviewed the progress in the relationship since their last discussion. They also noted in particular the commencement of the Young Professional Scheme. Jaishankar and Cleverly also exchanged views on the global situation as well as the G20 agenda. He also held a bilateral meeting with the Foreign Minister of Comoros and Chair of African Union, Doihir Dholkamal. The leaders reiterated steadfast support to the maritime neighbour guided by the Sagar policy. The External Affairs Minister assured the visiting leader that India's G20 presidency will prioritise the voice of the global south. A bilateral meeting was also held between India and Mexico. The External Affairs Minister tweeted that a warm meeting with Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard was held on the G20 Foreign Ministers meetings sidelines. The leaders noted a strong multilateral cooperation and discussed the G20 agenda too. They also focused on issues related to growth and development and asserted that bilateral ties have progressed significantly in the recent years. Jaishankar welcomed the opening of Mexican consulate in Mumbai, and the two sides also exchanged ideas on mobility, sustainability and innovation. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Wednesday held wide-ranging discussions with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on bilateral cooperation, the Ukraine conflict and issues relating to G20. The Russian Foreign Minister landed in the national capital on Tuesday night to attend a two-day meeting of the G20 Foreign Ministers that is taking place amid Russia's escalating confrontation with the Western powers over the Ukraine conflict. Both leaders held wide-ranging discussions and exchanged views on bilateral cooperation and G20 related issues. The External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar also met Nigeria's Foreign Minister Geoffrey Onyema this afternoon, and the EAM underlined India's strong commitment to the global south in the interests of the African Union. Foreign Minister of Oman Badr Al Busaidi has arrived in India to attend the first G20 Foreign Ministers meeting starting Thursday. So a whole lot of leaders from within the G20 and leaders from the Global South are in New Delhi for the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting that begins from Thursday. On to the second focus of the evening. India today called upon G20 nations to adopt multilateral action for faster extradition of the domestic front as well as from abroad during the first anti-corruption working group meeting of G20 nations held in Gurugram, Haryana. Chairing the meeting with co-chair Italy, Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh said in his inaugural address that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has envisioned developing such an administrative ecosystem for a developed India which has zero tolerance for corruption. DD India correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh reports from Gurugram.
The first anti-corruption working group meeting of the G20 kick-started in Gurugram in Haryana on Wednesday. As G20 president, India is reaffirming united action to ensure zero tolerance against corruption and deepen G20 commitments towards countering corruption globally. MOS personnel, public grievances, pensions, Dr. Jitendra Singh addressed the inaugural session. He said economic offences have been a problem faced by many, especially when the offenders flee from jurisdiction of country.
The corruption and related economic offences have harmed the welfare of the citizens of many countries, or may I say across the world. The corrupt find a way to park their proceeds of crime, and this money belongs to the citizens of the country from which it has been taken. Often, this has been taken from some of the poorest people in the world. Further, it is such money that is pushed into evil activities, and that's another major concern. From illegal drugs that destroy young lives to human trafficking. From weakening the democracies to the sale of illegal arms. This dirty money funds several destructive enterprises.
MOS Dr. Jitendra Singh also shared how Prime Minister Narendra Modi has envisioned developing an administrative ecosystem for a developed India which has zero tolerance for corruption.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has envisaged developing such an administrative ecosystem. And I assure you for that, which has zero tolerance to corruption. Taking inspiration from him, India's presidency will aim to focus on pragmatic action-oriented steps to address the wider implications of corruption, to strengthen international cooperation on anti-corruption matters, and to deepen the G20 commitment towards countering corrupt actors and corruption.
The key sessions on day one focused on improving information sharing to strengthen the fight against corruption and economic crimes, strengthening asset recovery mechanisms related to corruption and economic crimes. Over 90 delegates from G20 member countries, invitee countries, and international organizations participated in deliberations.
The objective is to look for a common view about the fight against the corruption, because corruption is a very sensitive item, not only for India and Italy, but I think all over the world.
I hope that the convention, the group, will establish a firm proposal and an agreement, a global agreement against corruption, even if we have different legislation, a different structure, constitutional or non-constitutional structure.
We discuss very important areas of anti-corruption cooperation. The combating corruption is a very important topic, and we discussed the information exchange among law enforcement authorities.
By cooperating strongly, we can share information, we can trace the asset, we can find the suspect.
Really deeply impressed by the quality of organization of the anti-corruption working group meeting, and also especially by the hospitality of our Indian friends.
The opportunity to participate in this anti-corruption working group will provide us with possibility to share our experience and to connect with the Indian authorities in the fighting corruption.
A side event on leveraging ICT for combating corruption in public sector saw many of India's success stories such as DBT, Jam Trinity take center stage.
Day 1 of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting saw delegates emphasize on proactive sharing of information, improving mutual legal assistance framework alongside technology intervention to curb corruption. With camera person Rakesh Kumar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in Gurugram.
In an exclusive conversation with DD India's correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh, Minister of State for Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions in the Government of India, Dr. Jitendra Singh shared about India's priorities for the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting. He spoke about how technological intervention in India has helped curb corruption and more. Listen in.
As part of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting has begun in Gurugram. We have with us Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh to talk about it. Welcome to Doordarshan, sir. First, sir, under India's presidency, what are the key priorities that India is looking at as far as the anti-corruption engagement is concerned?
I think it's very much in keeping with the spirit and the declaration of intent made by Prime Minister Modi soon after he took over in 2014 that India would follow an approach of zero tolerance towards corruption. And that I think that principle, that commitment applies domestically as much as internationally. There were a series of habitual offenders who would commit an economic offence within India and then move out to another country where they would find the law much more friendly or convenient to their offence. And they would also find means of parking the ill-gotten money somewhere. It is this government which brought in, under Prime Minister Modi's guidance, Foreign Economic Offenders Act in 2018. And it went on also to ensure the recovery of the money which had been taken away and sought to be parked elsewhere, as a result of which as much as about $180 billion have been brought back to India and restored to the public sector undertakings or public sector banks from where actually they ought to have been.
Sir, you talk about corruption as a global challenge. You also mentioned how not just bilateral engagement, but a multilateral engagement is what it will take. What are the tangible outcomes we can expect from this engagement here?
I think at the outset, first and the foremost, that the realization that yes, that is the right course. That is the most, if not ideal, at least the most optimum course available, because we can't be dealing with it effectively all alone. Even bilaterally, maybe it has certain limitations, but it may not be able to meet its avowed objectives. And that realization is now gradually dawned.
So part of the focus is also on economic fugitives. India also has an important list of fugitives. What bearing is this engagement likely to have in our expectation to extradite, bring them back home?
Yeah, because different laws prevailing in different countries were sometimes proving to be I should not say impediment, but they were proving to be facilitating the offenders and encouraging them to commit the offense. So once we are sitting and brainstorming amongst each other, we would be able to realize which law of a given country has proved to be a facilitator, how best to overcome that deficiency. India's emerged as a voice, and with the kind of varied experience and the heterogeneous conditions prevailing over here, and the kind of experience that we've gone through, and the kind of success stories we have successfully created, even in the most hostile circumstances, the most notable being the vaccine story in the pandemic times led by Prime Minister Modi, has not only raised India's esteem and stature, but has given the world the confidence to believe and to trust that what emanates from India is possibly applicable to them as well.
That was Dr. Jitendra Singh, Union Minister, speaking about the scope and potential of the Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting, G20 underway in Gurugram. With Team DD India, Shubhendu Ghosh from Gurugram.
India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant hosted an event called Building Resilient and Inclusive Economies, the Promise of Digital Public Infrastructure in New Delhi on Wednesday. The Indian Minister of Communications, Electronics, IT and Railways, Ashwini Vaishnav, delivered the keynote address on the occasion, while Bill Gates, the co-chair and trustee of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, was the guest of honor. Gates praised India for showing how investments in technology and innovation at scale can unleash changes from how people save money to how governments serve their citizens. Listen in.
India has created a unique framework for digital economy. This infrastructure is inclusive. It focuses on making a significant difference in people's lives. It places premium on openness. It emphasizes trusted solutions. Most importantly, these are the solutions which can be scaled to a population level. All this has been created over a period of time, last few years, and has been successfully implemented in a population, in a billion plus population. That's what makes it a really big achievement, really resilient framework which can be adopted by different countries.
India in particular, by laying the groundwork for digital public infrastructure, starting with the ID system, allows people to build on top of that. And to make financial access, financial payment, an element of that in a trusted way allows for an incredible variety of applications. Before the digital approach came along, the speed of people adopting new bank accounts was slow enough that it would have taken almost 50 years to get pervasive usage. But because of the pioneering investments, including creating the basic Aadhaar identity, India was in the lead in getting out payments to over 300 people during the pandemic, including 200 women. And our foundation is proud to have been able to support the different partners here in the government.
Bill Gates also met India's Health and Family Welfare Minister, Dr. Mansukh Mandavia, and during the meeting, he appreciated India's COVID-19 management, vaccination drive and digital health initiatives like Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. They also discussed India's G20 health priorities, Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana and E-Sanjeevani. These are all programs that are run by India's Health Ministry. The Health Minister showed him the National Health Emergency Operations Centre and the National Public Health Observatory War Room, which was created during the COVID-19 pandemic. The War Room monitors the policy impact framework of public health programs in all Indian states. Through this, the status of health-related programs and initiatives is monitored through artificial intelligence and technology, along with the pace of vaccination and tracking of COVID cases. So that's the integration of health in India with technology. The UAE Minister of Foreign Affairs has praised the strong and historical relations between UAE and India and commended efforts by the Indian side to host the G20. The first meeting of the G20 Steering Committee was chaired by Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Foreign Minister of UAE, with the participation of numerous UAE ministers and officials. The meeting focused on UAE's G20 summit priorities for 2023 following India's G20 presidency's invitation to participate as a guest country. During the virtual meeting, Sheikh Abdullah emphasized the importance of cooperation and coordination among steering committee members in order to strengthen UAE's G20 participation and efforts to highlight the country's contributions regionally and internationally. In this regard, Sheikh Abdullah noted that the Indian G20 presidency reflects the country's leadership in hosting major global events to promote international cooperation and achieve sustainable development goals worldwide. India's Ministry of Science and Technology has organized a conference to deliberate upon the critical need for G20 countries in the area of energy. Delegates from all G20 countries will discuss 21st century challenges related to energy materials and devices, solar energy utilization and photovoltaic technology and materials and processes for green energy at the G20 RIIG conference on materials for sustainable energy, and that is scheduled to take place in Ranchi from the 2nd to the 3rd of March. Jharkhand gave a rousing welcome to the delegates of G20 at Birsa Munda Airport in Ranchi. The conference will encompass inaugural technical and valedictory sessions, a plenary lecture on strategy towards low carbon transition, driving India towards net zero, and a panel discussion. About 25 foreign delegates from all G20 countries, including EU and international organizations such as the International Solar Alliance, are expected to participate in the conference. And it's time to say goodbye, but before that, let's tell you that the Women at 20 delegates were treated to another cultural night on the last day of the inception meeting at Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar in Maharashtra on Tuesday, and the artists performed tribal Mangala Gaur Shiv Srotam dances, a performance depicting the great Jijamata, mother of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, was also presented for the delegates. Before we end the show, we leave you with these mesmerizing visuals. Take a look. Namaskar.
सारे नावाने खावाने सर 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 दुर दुर साने कोई नाही काही चिंता नी लालसा मर्दानी राग रोष सुंदर बारसा चमकून जाई निष्ठेचा आरसा उधळून अंधार जाई शिवाची सावली फुलात ओढ तुझी सजली ग नंदित मेरिणि विश्व विनोदिनि नंदनुते गिरिवर विंध्य शिरोधिनि वासिनि विष्णु विलासिनि जिष्णुनुते
इतनी जल्दी पैसे डबल?
ओ, जमा करोगे तो फिर भुगतोगे। यहाँ लो। ऐसी लुभाने वाली स्कीम में पैसे जमा करना यानी धोखे की संभावना, इसलिए पहले पूरी जांच, उसके बाद पैसे जमा, नहीं तो आपके पैसे हो जाएंगे पुर्र। आरबीआई कहता है
जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
Unity and diversity, does it translate down to the poorest of poor? Is there a certain segment and section of society that feels that it's very marginalized and never a part of the majority opinion?
Every time we focus more on the diversity aspect, and not to the diversity aspect, but a distorted aspect of diversity extending to the extent of divisivity. So, when our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi came, he has undertaken an uphill task.
G20 नए विचारों की परिकल्पना के लिए और सामूहिक एक्शन को गति देने के लिए एक ग्लोबल प्राइम मूवर की तरह काम करें। वैश्विक विकास महिलाओं की भागीदारी के बिना संभव नहीं है। भारत की G20 अध्यक्षता की थीम वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर में पूर्ण रूप से समाहित है।
The changing world of news. Headlines that you wake up to. News that shapes your day. Stories that matter to you. The latest and most accurate updates. A fresh start to a new day. The Breakfast News, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. on DD India. As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India. Get in-depth analysis of the important news of the day. Spotlight on day's newsmakers. Expert comments to dissect the news. Get the finer points of the matter. Watch Dateline 5 p.m. on weekdays on DD India. Get in-depth analysis of the important news of the day. Spotlight on day's newsmakers. Expert comments to dissect the news. Get the finer points of the matter. Watch Dateline 5 p.m. on weekdays on DD India.
Now, how critical is the kind of work you've done for the people of Australia as well as India and the world?
Some of the technologies which we are developing, Gautam, are really going to play an important role in many areas. Just to give one of the areas which we are splitting water to generate hydrogen.
Namaskar and thank you for joining us here on the special program, the Northern Ireland Brexit Deal. It's called the Windsor Framework. It's being seen as a win-win agreement on a key sticking point between the UK and the EU post-Brexit. It concerns goods moving over the open borders between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Now, Ireland is part of the EU and Northern Ireland is part of the UK. And the open borders were a key provision of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement that had ended decades of bloodshed between the two islands. Now, Brexit was threatening to return these 270-odd soft border entry points into hard borders, and it was also becoming a key issue in regulating trade and controlling smuggling after Brexit. So let's discuss the economics and the politics of this new agreement between the Rishi Sunak-led government in UK and the von der Leyen-led European Commission. Let me introduce you to our guests on the program. Ambassador Baswati Mukherjee is former senior diplomat, and Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi is professor at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. Ambassador Mukherjee, let me start with you. Why is this agreement being seen as safeguarding the Good Friday Agreement? Was there a fear that Ireland and Northern Ireland would restart that cycle of violence?
But absolutely, one of the main
difficulties of achieving a smooth Brexit was the whole issue of the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. And the reason for that is that the Good Friday Agreement ensured that there would be no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is a EU member state. And when the Brexit was being negotiated, the earlier